It's today in EVE Online, May 9th. This is Matterall. Let's check out what's going on in EVE Online. Actually, we're going to change the name of this show to EVE 2020, just so it's easily findable. But it will be the same content. It's open conversation for the most part, talking with people who come around, checking in on what's going on during the day. We hope to, at some point soon, have 2 shows per day. So you guys, so we don't miss stuff, and we also can cover many deep topics and that sort of stuff. The other host will be Artemis Albosa, who's fantastic at digging up information and reporting it. But mostly our shows are going to be conversational and relaxed, browsing what's going on in EVE Online at that time. So let's get started. Right now, it is 1,500, and the population sits at 3,400. It's the weekend, should be higher, and it is higher by like 5,000 at this time. If we look at the week, by the way, you can see there are definitely peaks every 7 days or so. Those are weekends. So you're always going to get more. Let's see how many more. Yeah, it's usually about 4,000 or 5,000 more people playing on weekends than play during the week, even with this quarantine going on. Go ahead, Caleb.
No, it's just that nice sinus pattern of logins. It's always nice to see that it's still growing, except that the DDoS attack has, of course, slammed it a bit. So that nice growth that we've been seeing for a while has kind of suffered a little bit. Hopefully that gets corrected now that the DDoS is hopefully over and things have been fixed and patched.
Did you catch that Hilmar said that he suspects the botters who are frustrated with the amount of progress CCP has done is probably behind it? Yeah,
that's just wrong. What's more likely, because it's true that historically there's been a bit of a connection between the whole gray RMT market and things like bot bans and outbursts of rage, but recently it's not really been the pattern that much, and I really suspect that this is the fact that the CCP was on a very, very public stream announcing all these things, and they've been very visible in the marketing, right? They're pushing on Serenity, they're pushing on Echoes, they're growing on TQ, and then they go and do a big game developer common stream with that Yaya thing, which had a lot of viewers. So that means that suddenly you are back in visibility and people will pay attention to you, which is also healthy. It's also a good thing because it will pay out on the other side of this.
What Yaya thing are you talking about?
They had a stream which was basically the whole game developer community did this big common stream about staying at home and isolation and gaming and game development. So they had invited a lot of people on that stream from different game developers. And I think actually CCP was one of the last in that list. So that I think I heard a number of like 70,000 people at least was engaged in that.
It's okay.
Let me see if I can find it.
All right, yeah, because I didn't know about this. So they basically are just becoming more visible, and that's attracted more attention, and so that's maybe part of the DDoSing. And we wonder if this is just EVE Online or if it's a certain sector of games. It's usually not just one game, but who knows? Don't even actually know how DDoSes occur. All right, well, while Caleb is digging up some stuff, I want to say hi to the other guys in here. We have Rich, Rags, and a CSM candidate you might know from the ARC, DutchGunner.
Hello, hello. Or as you announced me last time, the Flying Dutchman with a gun.
The Flying Dutchman gunning. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It's just part of the tradition to screw up names and identities.
Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm running with it. Other people are picking it up. So it's a fun way to get a nickname. And as far as nicknames come, there are far worse possibilities out there.
Are you actually running with it, the Flying Dutchman?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And with your permission, I'm definitely going to make a note about it somewhere.
Yeah, of course. All yours. That's hilarious. All right. Well, we promised to talk to you this time. Last time we had to go through some statistics and what was going on in EVE, and we didn't get a chance to talk to you. I'm making that promise again today. While Caleb is looking for some stuff, I'm going to quickly go through the numbers and see if there's any anomalies in EVE by going through .lan and checking out the statistics. Let's have a look. Most violent regions, again, sync liaison on top. And that has been the case for a while now, as there is a minor conflict going on between Code and Sicko. I don't actually like that ticker name, so I'll just call them Silent Company. That's who they are. As far as most violent systems in 0-0 space, which is outlaw space, where there are no authorities, Delve tops the list this time, with Veil of the Silent second and Catch in third. These numbers are all relatively mild, 985 for Delve, 777 for Veil of the Silent, etc. So I'm not reading out the numbers because they're just kind of within the normal boundaries. Most violent systems, 1DQ is most violent system. That's headquarters of Delve. And LXQ in Ethereum Reach. Both those are headquarters for the biggest alliances in the game. So that's where a lot of stuff's going to happen. But this one's new. And that is at number 3 with 168 kills is 9KOE in Catch. And I imagine that is Brave territory. Let's actually just take a quick look and make sure that's true. It belongs to Test, it looks like. Change over to Sovereignty. Yeah, it's Test, but it's kind of near Brave territory. Brave is the green here on the left, and this is a pipe. There's probably a battle that happened in there. If we drill down, we can see when it happened.
I believe 9KOE becoming violent is due to some operation run against simple farmers. So they've been moved slightly away from SV5 and WD and Head GP, and now they are, well, farming 9KOE.
Okay, yeah, and this looks like it happened about, well, it probably happened about 24 hours ago. It looks like the statistics fell out, so we can't tell. All right, but what do you think is going on there, Rich?
I think it's simple farmers who've traditionally camped that constellation close to Head GP, SV5, WD, and now they are currently, well, farming 9KOE. It's just simple farmers in that constellation.
All right, cool. Thanks, Sagrins, for Twitch Prime. We call it subscription.
I send you the links.
Thank you.
From the YANA stream.
Yeah. Thanks for the support, by the way. It's a good time to tell you, if you guys want to support the podcast and the station in general, go to Patreon/Matterall and look there. That's where we get the majority of our support, although you can support us in other ways as well. Okay, so going back to, I'll come back to that. I'm just going to circle back, Caleb, but first I want to finish up these stats real quick. Just pointing out anomalies. Tama, Aunanen, and Kamala, all usually violent areas in low sec. They top the list. And most violent high sec is Narja. That seems pretty high, and so does Udama, so there must be some ganking going on. And we're going into the weekend, so I imagine that'll continue. Those are 2 choke points between trade hubs, Narja and Udama. Narja has 1,352 ships destroyed, and Udama has 1,092. That's a lot. Oh, that's a whole lot. I wonder if that's the last 24 hours, why that didn't show up on the most violent regions. Yeah, domain was number 3. Okay. That's that. It is Saturday, so let's have a look at the top sov changes for the last 7 days. Null Secnia has -6 systems. They are losing space in cache. Yeah, I think they're fighting over that. Let's see. I wish I had more information off the top of my head, and I don't. I do know that Null Secnia, Iron Guard, and I forget who they're fighting. We can find out.
Vindictive and Fed Up and a few other groups from Legacy.
Thank you, Orions. So it's Legacy, more or less, versus Null Secnia.
I haven't seen a lot of Tappy involvement just yet, but they're the
see.
ones. Plus, there's XIX involved as well, Fireco.
The Fire Coalition. Okay. All right. And Iron Guard joined Null Secnia, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, is this where Fed Up, one of the corp leaders, took off from Null Secnia? Is that related?
Yeah. So when Iron Guard joined Nullsec 9, before that happened, they were in Goons for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Slim Jim Tim, one of their FCs for Iron, joined a different group, joined Fed Up, and then recently they joined Nullsec Naya, and then soon follow on he being up in Fed Up high enough to do FCing work, had access to hangars, yanked a bunch of stuff on his way out. Back to Iron.
Yeah, I see. So you went back to Iron. Okay, yeah, smash and grab. Again, Rich, we don't celebrate those. We do celebrate cunning and planning and, 3 months of setting up a heist. That we'll celebrate. But just grab
I don't
stuff.
know the particulars, but I don't know if he planned or did any other stuff. I just know that's what happened.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just we're trying to make a distinction about like what kind of behavior to talk about and celebrate in EVE Online, and what kind it's just kind of like shitty behavior. But okay, so that's Null Secnia, and are they losing cache?
The U.S. time zone stuff, we haven't seen a lot of it. Like Vindictive and them have really wanted to start a push yesterday, and they faltered pretty badly just against Nullsec Naya. So it really depends on who all shows up to the timers and what happens.
Well, there's definitely a lot of like blank or systems that don't have any sov at all, so they must be in transition. But you can see the Null Secnia is a light blue. Maybe you can answer this. Null Secnia, any relation to Low Secnia?
Don't believe so.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. They're not related.
As for cache, I am aware that cache was one of the areas that Fraternity retreated to, and it was. I'm not sure. I'm well. Based on this, they're not going to hold it, but it was one of the areas they said that would be, I guess, no man's land, in an area that they would retreat to following the test Fraternity war.
Well, there was an alliance called the Skeleton Crew that were supposed to kind of be there and hold that little area, and then they collapsed on themselves. Nullsec Naya saw an opportunity and started filling in a little bit there for some content.
Skeleton Crew's kind of done that like 3 times now, right?
It is a pantsu fan thing to start a big thing and then just let it follow.
Yeah, it comes and goes. All right. Well, cache has always been. Do you know anything about this region? Well, I'll just say what I know, and then if you know anything, you can fill in. But it's been the historical home of Solar Fleet. This is the place that they fight over all the time. So it's interesting to me that, and Solar Fleet being a Russian group, you have UX Death, which isn't Solar Fleet. I'm not even sure it has the same guys in it, but they're Russians as well. Like, I wonder if this is like a territory they want to take over for, legacy reasons.
It's a good buffer area. It can get you closer to Gemini. You got the Spire right there, connection. So it's a good jump off point for invasions into that area. So having that area for XIX is good, and it gives them more buffer for their new little area of Innsmouth that they've moved into.
I'm going to take a look at the world map so you can see where it is, like on a map level. Let's see if I just hit this here. So this is weird dot line. If you back out too far, it takes you all the way to 0. So we go back in here. This takes a second to get adjusted. But yeah, it's an in-between region here. And you can see all the little red dots. That is cache, and it's between the drone regions and what do we call that area in the south there, from Great Wildlands to Imensia to Inchmother? We don't have a name for that region. It's just kind of considered the south, isn't it?
Yeah, for the most part.
Mm-hmm. And so I didn't realize it, but cache kind of connects the south with the east in an interesting way.
It can get you into multiple regions fairly quickly.
Yeah, I can get you right into Geminate too. It's like 2 jumps out of Geminate. That's crazy.
Yeah. So you'll see a lot of focusing on usually historically I6 Tech SYN's a key area because that gets you into the Great Wildlands and then to the right and up that thing to 8 spin gets you into the Spire.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, those are long jumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were gonna say?
No, I'd say yeah. Those little areas right there is where you see a lot of where you'll see a lot of conflict most likely if this thing heats up and they start pushing that direction.
If we were doing naming nomenclature stuff, it would end up being what, the Gamma Quadrant?
If you say so. I don't know. Let me just deal with some TIS business there. Okay, so that is cache. It's being fought over by Nilseknia, who's sitting there. I think they're moving out or getting moved out by UX Death and some allies of Legacy Coalition, mostly the Fire Coalition. Keep an eye on that sort of thing. Thanks for filling me in on that. Next, we have, Retribution. So that is the same. We're talking about the same area, I bet. Let's have a look. No, this is Decline. I'm totally confused. Retribution is in the north. Okay, Stella. What is this? Couture? I don't know what that means. They're in Quarius, another Quarius group. We talked about Quarius a few days ago. Check it out. It's even in the title. You'll be able to find it. French Connection picks up 4 systems. A lot of French groups in EVE Online, but I'm not familiar with French Connection. They are in Pure Blind up there as well, so good luck.
French Connection's a group that was started by, I believe, Tetsuit Raiders that left Tri a while ago and kind of did their own thing.
Triumvirate, okay. And then a couple other small exchanges there. So Alliance Movements, Silent Company, picks up 625 new members, even though they're under pressure from code. Ranger Regiment picks up 343. Let's have a look at those. What these where these people came from. Let's see, that would be 5-8 and 5-3. So we're talking about Knight K, Knight, and we are Wim. Alliance history. Stars.
I'm sorry, they left TC.
Yeah. Oh, TC, not. Wait,
yeah, wait. I got my own alliances mixed up because I was in TC when they left.
TC is who?
The Culture.
Oh, well, we haven't seen them in a long time. Are they reconstituted or something?
No, they dissolved.
We're talking about Fountain, the Culture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That was like 2 years ago. So what we're looking at here, this new arrivals to Ranger Regiment are actually groups that broke off of MSN. There was a big to-do in MSN and some people took off and it looks like they ended up in Ranger Regiment. So that is something I heard about, but I don't know what the fight was over. But a couple corporations split off from. These are 2 Chinese groups. MSN is in the north, allied with Fraternity and PandaFam, and so a couple corporations left there and defected south to the enemy, which would be the Imperium, and ended up with Ranger Regiments. So that's interesting.
About it too, somebody claimed that MSN might be it's disbanding or fail scaling or something. I'm looking at the corporations that left MSN, and the one that sticks out to me is Eve Yadswager 52. I think that's one of the more primary PvP focused or capable groups of MSN.
Okay, so trouble in MSN. That'll benefit the big brothers around it. Okay, so intergalactic space hobos is collapsing. That's a great ticker, bums. Jeez. We did get confirmation that they were that was closing, so they're losing people. And looks like Goon Swarm, Legion of X-Death, Fraternity, these groups have all picked up some new members, and that's what's going on in the alliance movements. Real quick, let's see if there's anything fun to look at inside of the kill boards. I'm going to start looking at stuff lower than 10 billion. We're going to start at 5 billion to see if there's anything that digs up more interesting stuff. Like already you have this Marshal that was destroyed. That belonged to Dracarys. That was destroyed in Branch. If he's in Dracarys and that got destroyed in Branch, Dracarys was in Branch or in that northern area. But again, the Marshal is Black Ops, so it might have been killed in action, basically. Let's see. Here, a couple Naglfars. Here's an ARC. This is State War Academy. Boy, it's been rough for ARCs, hasn't it? No, that's the same one that we covered the other day. So that was somebody moving. Finally, in Udama, the Pingwing Incursion lost to an Orca to Goon Swarm Federation. 6 billion. That's much more expensive than the ship itself. So let's look into the cargo and see what it was carrying.
It was those Pith A types hardeners.
Oh, yeah, let's see. Okay, so it's routine stuff.
It was blinged.
The fit?
Yeah.
Yeah. 30% was the hardness.
Sorry, I missed that. Okay, so it was actually wearing its bling. It wasn't just carrying it. Okay.
It looks like he was using it as the Orca as transport.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And he dressed it up. He tanked it pretty well, except I guess the Goon Swarm was motivated. Let's see what they killed it with, because you're going to need a lot of firepower to take down an Orca that's armored. Has shields that strong. And of course, it's going to be a Talos fleet. Well, actually, it's Talos plus bombers. Let's look at all the pilots, because there probably was a bunch of them. You can't. Yeah, it's Talos fleets. I think, I could get an ARC up to, which is a jump freighter, which has a beefier armor than the normal freighter. And I could get that up to about 950,000 EHP, effective hit points. And I'm still afraid of a Talos fleet, because Talos are gunboats, and enough of those will, and they're not that expensive, so enough of those will chew through anything. So you're really never 100% safe.
This is the guy people complain about. They say he's doing some stuff he shouldn't be, but it's just him and his alts, and he does a good job of ganking stuff with them.
You're talking about the aggressors in this case?
Yeah.
Kusion Special Team. Kusion Special Team. Jayden Kusion used to be part of Code, but he's now working under Goon Swarm Federation, doing his own.
Wow.
Well, that Orca also had a high-grade crystal pod, which was killed by the smart bombing Mauler.
This isn't all one guy, is it?
Oh, this is all one guy.
Yeah.
Every single attacker here is all one guy and his 23 plus alts. He has a few videos and streams of him doing this kind of thing. I'll post voice chat for you.
So we get into accusations of multi-broadcasting input and all that kind of stuff.
Pretty
Yeah, I don't
much.
think he is, but that's what everyone says when they
That's-
see something like this pop up every once in a while.
That's the
Well, take a
rap,
look
huh?
take a look in voice chat. That is a video of him in Uedama doing his thing. That does not look like him, but broadcasting. It looks similar to what old Mecha God does.
See if I can pop this out. Why do we always come back to ganking? Like, it's just like it's like the original sin of you online, isn't it? I see. So he's proving, this is interesting to watch because what he's doing is he's proving how he does it so that he can avoid criticism for having that much firepower at the command of one person, that it doesn't involve other players. So this is one guy running, what is that, like 10, 12 ships, and he's just got it laid out perfectly so he can switch between them quicker. Let's watch that again. And so he's moving between the 10 clients on his desktop. And it looks like it's all one monitor, at least in this case. And that's allowing him to overheat and fire his guns. You can see the bright green at the bottom right there. So that's a demonstration of how he does it. You know, it's probably within the boundaries of legal in the game. I mean, from what he's shown, that looked legal, but it's not necessarily what a virtual world's supposed to do, right? Like that doesn't seem like in the spirit of things. All right, let's move on to, I think we're done there. And timer boards, what's going on this weekend? It's not much, it looks like. Well, the cache, again, there it shows up. Nullsecchia is getting bashed, and we'll keep our eye on for some results there. Okay, that's enough of the stats that are going on in EVE Online. Let's take a look real quick at EVE Online on Twitter. Still have status stuff coming out from EVE status. That's EVE_status on Twitter, and saying that some people are still having problems connecting. I think it's few people, but there are people having problems. All right. Ooh, something came out. This is ISD just put out a tweet, says, election special, voting for a new president is underway across Gallente Federation in delayed weekend poll. Oh, this just popped up.
This is where we need Fonsui.
This is where we need a reader, right? Where's Fonsui when we need him? But you know, we have Dutch here, and Dutch is very familiar with, well, I don't know if you're familiar with the Gallente elections, or if it's mostly Triglavian stuff that you're familiar with, but
He can double down on election, right?
It's a mix. The main thing, though, is that came out today, and I haven't gotten around to reading it yet.
So you don't know what's
So give me a moment
okay.
to read, and then we can come back to it later.
Oh, all right. Yeah, don't worry about it. We can talk about something else. We'll come back to it. The reason I'm picking on it is because it might be interesting. There's, I think there was a player who was up for the election. So you had an actual player whose character was a part of the in-game lore election that was happening, which was unusual. So,
yeah, those democratic Gallente stuff.
Yeah.
It's
So
been a while.
Let's detour though over to what you were talking about.
Yeah, let's just go back to the YANA thing, because again, this is about the fact that CCP have had a lot of visibility, like not just a little bit, but like potentially a lot. They were also, because of all this Corona thing, quite a lot of places have been commenting on things to do, especially in the gaming sphere, where when it comes to entertaining yourself during lockdown, and they were on BBC among other things, and then they did that YANA stream. So they've been very, very, very visible. So the RMT, illegal RMT guys might actually not be the culprits this time. It might just be the fact that someone decided that, oh, this is a great target.
Well, yes, but we just don't know. Like DDoS,
No, we can't know.
Yeah, it's mysterious. It's attacks through the internet where they bombard servers, and the server can't tell if it's a legitimate player that wants to play or if it's just a fake request to play. And you put thousands and millions of those signals in there, and the server has to figure out who's actually wanting to play the game and who's just creating a bottleneck. Pernicious too. Like there's no benefit from that. It's just really. I mean, I don't know what the motivations are for it, but I couldn't imagine any way of like justifying taking away people's opportunities to enjoy a pastime. Like,
well, if you want the tinfoil hat, right?
Mhm.
When you have a situation like this, I don't know if you noticed, but I got the feeling that there was some aggressive marketing stuff going on with the whole Zoom security issue. Suddenly, Microsoft was very active, and I would be surprised if they were not doing a little bit of black hat shenanigans in making sure that the security issue was spread wide and everyone knew that Zoom was not the good option, so everyone would shift to Microsoft Teams. The point is that this is similar when you're talking about the gaming industry. Of course, they will never admit that they would have agents like this, but if you have the potential of a massive market share grab, right, getting a lot of eyeballs on your product, then you might be prone to actually use some gray area or even black area where you actually deliberately attack your competitor. So that would be my second guess. My first guess is that it's just some lolseeker type activity. We were talking with Rich about this the other night about one of the early days attacks on CCP. It's just a thing. DDoS is just a natural risk in internet and in gaming industry, right?
I actually put a video in voice chat if you want to see what a DDoS would look like visually. It's a rather humorous example of a fish and a net, but that is what a DDoS essentially is.
So even though we are tanking a bit, I think it's potentially a good tank. I think it's because of the fact that there's been that much attention, and we are seeing numbers grow, except for these past 6, 8 days or something like that. Before that, there was very massive growth on TQ, and Serenity is just
here's a DDoS,
ballistic.
a DDoS represented by fish.
So think of each fish as a packet, and obviously the net as a server. So the net is catching all these the fish, the connections, the server is, and then you get a DDoS attack, which is all these connections, a whole bunch of them in rapid succession. Sometimes these connections have come from quite a server with quite a huge output of packets, and now the server's crashed and your net's being ripped apart and damaged.
Yeah, it's usually.
I like to describe a DDoS as a visit to the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles. They can handle. They have 10 tellers, 10 clerks, and they can handle 10 people at a time. And there's normally 100 people waiting, and the queue moves. But when there's 10,000 people that show up for the same 10 clerks, then the people who are, the legitimate customers who are mixed up in that line are simply not going to get through. There isn't enough time to process all the people. Even if they show up and the clerks are able to easily tell who is fake. They show up and the fake customer says, well, I wasn't really here. I was just here to waste your time. They get sent away, but they've already successfully wasted your time. So you don't actually have to get in order to cause problems. You just have to cause problems at the very first step.
There's also a slight parallel with current hospital bed situations, but aside from that, usually these things are run on low orbit ion cannons, right, Rich? It's still just botnets that are massively part of.
Botnets are the biggest issue, but people paying for like booters or something, it should not be an issue. It shouldn't have been an issue for the last 5 years. Truthfully speaking. Well, so I'm not sure what's going on with the DDoS protection. I'm hoping it's beefed up.
Well, and sometimes, as we heard, the protection can also get in the way, eliminating legitimate players from playing, and that's part of the problem. It's almost like an immune system response is too heavy for the body.
Yeah, they end up with false positives essentially, or just technical issues that are created by the.
Right.
But on the whole, there are very few false positives. The majority of players are able to access the services. What they've been doing, by the way, I just want to be clear. Like, people will use the term "the server" or even "the servers," and it's important to note that the game servers, the actual computers that run the game, are not the things being attacked and are not the things being overwhelmed. It is the entry point to that. It is the network connection that is being overwhelmed. It's the routers and whatnot that are being overwhelmed. It's also important to note that Eve exists in multiple places. Tranquility itself is CCP-owned equipment that is in the London Internet Exchange data center, and all other things related to Eve. That includes account management and ESI and chat. All of those are hosted in Amazon. So when we see issues with Tranquility itself, like getting disconnected from the game server or module lag, that is an attack on Tranquility in the data center. When we see issues with chat or account management or ESI on CCP services that live in Amazon, the two entirely separate things, which means there's multiple coordinated attacks.
And that's why we see other groups usually having the same problem as EVE Online.
And again, if you look at the screen you're showing at the moment, that's pretty much the players and the competitors in the gaming field right now, right? It's also why they were chosen.
Yeah, so an attack on Amazon in general may impact EVE Online as well as other things, even if EVE wasn't the target. But an attack, an attack on Tranquility is essentially specifically an attack on Tranquility. It's possible that it could impact other services housed in the London Internet Exchange data center. We wouldn't necessarily be aware of those.
Yeah, thank you, François, for explaining that. Appreciate it. So we were looking at YANA here because this is something that CCP was involved with, I think, last weekend or on May 2nd, it says here. What was this, Caleb?
Well, it was a big event for online gaming. Home Apart or something like that was the title. It was basically about what to do while people were in lockdown and what games were of interest and value, and then introducing those game developers and what's been happening. I don't know if you noticed, but again, CCP and other games have been mentioned a lot in the news in relation to this whole thing of how gamers are pretty much, well, coping in this situation, right? It's almost like a forced added vacation, and they just have so much more time to actually invest in their hobbies and in teaching all the people that have not yet been introduced to how social gaming actually works to the platforms and the games that we play. So this is just a little bit of a patting themselves on the shoulder, and it was a fun little event. And I think CCP went last or second last or something like that on that list of presentations.
Well, anyway, you think that the visibility there, the added visibility, might have created a problem. Okay. Well, that's good. Also brings in more players at some point. Right. So I think we've covered everything that we wanted to as far as the normal stats. By the way, François, did you see that there's an election special that's happened just now? Just read the headline: voting for a new president underway across Gallente Federation and delayed weekend poll.
It's a really interesting thing.
Is it?
Not necessarily the elections, but what CCP or what happens in EVE Online, the world news, is in the past it was all about things that were actually happening in New Eden, and it was just telling you about things that had happened, and they didn't really touch that much on the world itself. With recently, like a couple of months ago, they started changing that, and most of that is on the footnotes, where you just see small headers. And that's about things that we as a player have no influence on, but you can get out little bits and pieces of information about what is happening in the world, and it does help you feel that it's more alive. What's interesting about this election in particular is that for the first time, a player managed to get himself in it. And CCP said, you know what, we looked at whatever we have on if it's possible or not, we're going to roll with this.
Right. So when you said a player got into Init, we're not talking about the Initiative Alliance. We're talking about...
This is the fact that Juliana Soder, who is a player, is running for the president of the Gallente Federation, the NPC, faction here, NPC Empire. This has never happened before. And CCP has chosen to, he on his own stated his quote unquote candidacy, and CCP decided to pick it up and run with it. I believe he even offered his character. He said, if you want to elect my character, if you want to write that story, I'll give up my character for the term of the presidency. It'll be an NPC for that time.
Wild.
And what's really interesting is, in the past, you had the Amar succession trials, where for the first time they said, okay, we're going to have this done by gladiatorial combat with players being a champion for one of the royal heirs. And that way, player actions had a direct influence in how the world of Eve was going to change, because depending on the heir, the Amar Empire would have a different stance and go with a different policy. The Gallente Federation, they had their elections, but there was one time where players could gather ballots in the past, and based on the amount of ballots, players could have some influence on how many votes were going to different candidates. This would be the first time where a player itself could be voted into office, instead of he or she or other players have an influence on where it's going to be as a whole, where it's CCP that has full control on how the story is going to progress. This would be one of those cases where it's a player that gets control of that, or has a really strong say in it if he would be elected.
So in the past, we've had champions that represent non-player characters, fictional characters, and if the champion were to win the tournament, then the person the character that they represent ascends to the throne. But in this case, this person's going to... the player is not going to represent anyone. They're representing themselves, and they will ascend to control of one of the empires. Of course, they will give up that character and no longer be able to control it, because you can't have a player controlling a non-PC empire. So in that sense, it would be different.
So in case we haven't already covered this, there's actually... there is some interesting conclusions that have been drawn, or at least potential conclusions that have been drawn regarding the invasion and the progression of that. Interestingly enough, by Uriel, and he posted on the forums about it. There's in the latest update to the game, there were 3 new Triglavian trinary data streams that were added. These trinary data streams are essentially intercepted communications within the between the different Triglavian clades and their leadership. This new sequence of data streams seem to be targeted towards us. They're labeled XCZ, and they are rather prosaic. We've covered them here, but there's one specific piece in particular that Uriel noted that I would like to seize on. They state, one phrase says, "As the Sobornos and the Kybernauts pass over the waters of communion, the floods of liminality shall cover the faces of imminent glory and imminent gold alike." And this is pretty cryptic. This doesn't really mean anything out of context. But what was put together is this. During some early videos that were released, that were actually sent to players who possessed the semiosis consoles, which allowed us to intercept these communications, we saw the Triglavian scouts, the Rasnaborg, providing reports on stars, and they classified them. And one of the pieces of information that they included was the imminence of a given star, and they were. I'm trying to pull it up now. But essentially, there were all sorts of words that were used to describe the imminence, but one of them was described as imminence glory. And this is the only that refers directly to this new thing, and it happens to be an A0 blue star. And this jives with what we've seen, that all of their attacks have really A0 and the B0 blue stars. That's where the footholds have been found. So it's possible that when they say we'll cover the face of imminent glory and imminent gold, it's entirely possible that that's referring to the A0 and B0 blue stars. And it's very possible that these are the systems that will be focused on very heavily or perhaps exclusively during Chapter 3.
Wild. Okay. Thanks. What I want to do, if you don't mind, is we will actually dedicate more time to what's going on in Gallente space and what's going on with lore. But right now, what I want to do, if we can, is talk to DutchGunner about himself. Dutch is running for CSM this year, so it would be nice for people to get to know him that normally don't know much about the stuff that he's involved with, like ARC, the consortium. So let him explain that kind of stuff and also make a case for his candidacy. But first I want to say this. Vote your conscience. That's what the system is built for. We know that CSM's first 7 picks are going to be selected by groups that just vote for whoever they are told. But if you're going to, and if we're going to spend time, if you're going to spend time listening, and if we're going to spend time giving people a platform to talk about their CSM ambition or what kinds of things they would want to see in this game, if that's going to mean anything at all, it's going to take you guys giving people who talk here a chance to win your vote, and not just your 5th or 6th or symbolic 8th vote, but like your first vote. That's the only way you're going to make the game in the image that you want to make it. So I'm going to say that first of all. Otherwise, I don't want to waste my time interviewing very interesting people, 30 of them, to have you pick the 7 that are already shoo-ins. So if you're watching this, if you're a fan of TIS, I'm asking you and advising you to vote for your people who you think are the best qualified to represent the kind of game that you want to see. With that said, let's meet Dutch. How are you, DutchGunner?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I started playing in 2003. Read about EVE Online in a gaming magazine, and it just stood out differently, and I gave it a shot. I was and still am a bit of a nutter for mecha and spaceships. Reading about EVE Online and the sandbox, it's like, okay, I'll give it a go. Got hooked. Kept playing since 2003. So original owner. Sometimes with less activity, but overall I have been playing since 2003.
I'm going to interrupt you just to break it up a bit, but I love that. You just said original owner. It sounds like your character is a car.
Well, because of the character trading, you'll see more and more people that the character itself might be well known, but it might not be the person who created the character because it got transferred to another person that is taking over the character. So just saying like, yes, this is DutchGunner, this is the character, I created it, and I'm still playing with it.
That's hilarious. You've been around since 2003. How has the game changed? I'm going to see some perspective. That's why I'm asking you. And I'm not trying to drill you for like the best CSM answer, but just as one player to another, 2003 to now, have you felt phases of EVE Online? Like, has it been one thing and then another?
Definitely. There are massive changes, and I can't get into them all because I don't remember them all. But when EVE started, there was no Tech 2, there was no Tech 3. All you had in ships were you had your noob ship. There were shuttles, frigates, cruisers, battleships, and industrials. That was it. The agent system was more about you try to find an agent, you run missions, and it's a bit of RNG if you're going to be transferred to the next agent, and it could be a better one, it could be a worse one. So there was a lot more randomness involved, and it really was all about players finding their way and binding. And if you did not manage to make the connections, you really were walking into a desert trying to figure out what everything was, because there was no EVE University, there were no guides, everything was new, and everybody tried to find their way. EVE posted update with, we set a new record with 2,200 players online at the same time. And I've seen that grow to upwards of 60,000. And at one point, it's like, you know what, we're not going to keep track of it anymore.
Yeah, 2,200 was a record. That's funny. That's now EVE with a DDoS attack combined.
Yeah, so a lot have changed, and you can really see the difference where CCP started to get a better grip on what they were doing. They definitely went wrong a lot of times, but every time when they were called out on it, or when they got in touch or got lots of feedback, they did roll with it. And that really made a big difference, because the current agent system, where you have standings and you can progress, that was based on player suggestions. At the same time, if you're talking about the loyalty point store, that was done by players, by saying, look, it needs to change. This isn't working. How about this, or how about that? And CCP looked at it, picked up on it, and over time they just kept looking back with the balancing on ships, assigning them new roles, because they noticed, look, there is a bit of a linear progression, and once you moved out of the previous ships, you're not really going back to them anymore. That needs to change. Everything needs to have a role. So despite their focus going into different ways, they definitely helped and kept investing into the game itself, the universe, and contact with the players.
Yeah. You said that CCP had made some bad choices in the past, or choices you didn't think were right for the game. What characterizes some of the bad choices that CCP had made?
It was more and more about, okay, we need to introduce the next interesting thing, instead of, no, wait, we need to look at what we have and rebalance on that. And yet the most well-known one was the Summer of Rage. All things considering, personally, I think they made some bad decisions, but none of them were colossal or unforgiving, because when they were addressed to it, like, they're willing to say, okay, we made a mistake, this isn't good, we were wrong, we're going to do better. And that happened so many times throughout EVE history. And that definitely helps, besides with a really strong community itself, to just keep the game growing and expanding and reach the point where it is today. And you can now see a new approach where CCP is looking at things like, okay, we are actually going to give the players more and more influence on how the universe is going to shake up. Like in the past, you had the big events. One of their best implementations was the Sancha incursion arc, where you said, wow, things are happening. There were bits and pieces trying to figure out, and everybody could get in on it and figure out, okay, what are they talking about? What is the objective? How can we counter that? But we as players became so well organized and so influential that if one big group decided, we're going to crash it, and we're just going to floor it and kill everything so that we had our fun, CCP had to change, because otherwise you'll have one group, regardless of who it is, who is going to dictate everything that's happening. And now they're starting to go into a different direction, where it's more about, okay, we're looking for feedback from the players. How are you running this content? Are there any things that we need to address? Because they can't test everything. They can test, like, how does it work? Is everything working mechanically? But if you got two fleets going for a observatory flashpoint, and they're in different stages of the site itself, CCP doesn't have a way to test that. And with the third chapter, it really seems that they're going to say, okay, we're going to implement things. You don't know what it is yet, but you will have, based on all individual actions or all separate groups, you're going to have an effect, and you're going to have a influence on how the world is going to shape next.
Mm-hmm. All right, you're right in here. My reasons for running as a candidate is that you love the game, but you want to do your part in ensuring that it lasts for the next decade. What's that look like to you? What are some of the priorities that you would say CCP needs to pay attention to?
Well, that's also one of the things that I really want to focus on, and that's the accessibility of content. Have so much lore, and people just don't necessarily know where to start or where to find it. There is group PvE with fantastic possibilities to experience different things. Like you could just have, look, I'm new, I don't know what to do, but you have a person going, well, come on in, I'll explain you how fleet mechanics work, I'll tell you how fleet operates, how broadcasts work. But the big difference with that regard between the Triglavian invasions and the Sancha incursions is that with Sancha incursions, it was a winner takes all. The one that contributed the most to clearing a site, they got all of the reward. If there were two other fleets or there was one other fleet, they got nothing. So it was about who had the biggest wallet, who could throw the most ISK at it, and they would take it all. And you could really see that there were just a few groups that start to dictate, like, these are the ones who are running this content. And if you want to get in on it, either you have to join one of those groups and meet their requirements, or you're out of luck. And with these Triglavian invasions, it's more like, no. Everybody who contributed is going to get part of the reward. So it's disincentivized, like it's a disincentive to throw ISK at it. It's everybody has a chance to get in on it, and it's better to say, look, somebody's active in this side, we'll go to the other, because otherwise everybody is going to get a really low reward. So it encourages more access to the different bits of content, and that's going to be really important.
Yeah, so you're saying show people how to get involved with the content and make sure the content's balanced for enjoyment by more people than just the winner-take-all type.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
parts.
Oh, go ahead.
And there's things like you got people who are putting in the effort. You got people who are trying to reap the benefits from the efforts of others, and that's perfectly fine. That's part of how EVE works. But there does need to be a bit of a balance between the risk and the reward. And I'm probably going to hurt myself, and I do apologize for the other communities out there. But if you're in a Corvette and you can see that a site is in a minor conduit or a major conduit, you can come in. That fleet has aggression. That fleet is never going to leave the aggression from the Triglavians unless they warp off. All you have to do is sit there, do a tiny bit of damage with your civilian weapon module, and you'll get part of the payout with no effort, no risk other than losing a Corvette. But that's free. So you risk nothing. And you can reap the benefits from others who don't really have a counter. And some people said, well, you can suicide gank, but it's a Corvette. So the person who is leeching loses nothing because it's a Corvette, it's free. And the person that tries to do the suicide gank loses a ship, loses suicide, security standing. So that balance between risk and reward in that specific situation is off.
All right, so
and those are things
that's actually
addressed.
been reported to CCP Sledgehammer, by the way. He's aware of this issue.
So what you're saying,
I know.
What you're saying is that that's the kind of expertise you could bring to the table when CCP is building stuff. Is there anyone in CSM currently, or maybe the last CSM, that had that kind of expertise that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, but then
Me
again,
neither. I don't know anybody that knows that stuff that well. And it's funny because that's what CCP is building a lot of. So if we think about CSM and you think about players that need representation to craft the game, most of the people that we know that were on CSM may not be that familiar with the mechanics of the stuff that CCP is actually building, which is very interesting. Hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, and everybody's talking about nullsec, and it is one of those things that you can definitely have a lot of content, and that really is the ultimate sandbox. That's where players make their own sandcastles, knock over those of others. But getting in there, you do need some basic knowledge. And group PvE is a good way to get some of that knowledge, because if you go to nullsec and you say, I know fleet operations, I know clear comms, I know broadcasts, I'm familiar with tagging orders, that gives you a head start in getting into that kind of content or those kind of groups. but you need to give people the opportunity to get in there with public groups sitting there running that content and giving that as a training ground or just a laid back bit of information like, okay, let's just have fun and learn things on your pace. And if it takes time, here's an opportunity. Take the time you need.
Okay, so if I'm a skeptic of high sec person joining CSM, I would say, well, look, just file a ticket, like Fonsu just said, just file a ticket for those kinds of things. Don't really need to take up space for a rep for developing high sec content, PvE content, because that's not what the game's about. The game's about PvP. If I'm a skeptic saying that, what do you say to that?
Well, first of all, I'm not here to champion high sec. I'm not here to champion nullsec or wormhole space. I'm here to represent, like, I got this type of knowledge about how mechanics work in highsec. And one of the things that I saw in the CSM notes was, okay, how about we just have people running these sites go suspect? But if you're in highsec and somebody is suspect, they cannot receive remote reps because the person that's repping them is going to get concorded. So you're killing off the entire group content.
I love that. What a great answer. Yeah, there's stuff they don't think about.
It's not. I'm not out here to attack nullsec or to be a balancing board. I'm here to say, look, this is what I'm putting in, and I've done everything in EVE. I've been in nullsec. I've been in wormhole space. I've done abyssal diving. So I'm familiar with different environments. Sure, I don't know it all. I'm not going to claim I know it all. But what I can bring with me is like, okay, but this is how certain mechanics affect this specific part in highsec. And if people have suggestions, please contact me. That's the main thing. I don't know it all.
Well,
reach out to me, drop me a message, and I will take a note and I'll take it with me to the CSM.
Sure,
okay, these are issues.
Sure, contact is part of it, right? You're going to get, say, 50% of your what you bring to CSM and what CSM gives you to take to the players is going to be through correspondence through other people. But a CSM member should also be a strong player, someone who knows something about the game and understands the mechanics, where they're at, where they fall short, and also has an idea on where the development path of the game should go, like who are underserved players, who are overserved players, and the other way around. So in your case, like, you would need to have expertise on some of the mechanics that you're in touch with. What are some of those expertise that you have? What are some of the things that you've done in the game that make you someone that could sit there and be an instant filter on some of the things that CCP are designing for players?
That's a good question and a tough one. Like the group PvE things. I've done Sancha incursions. I've seen a lot about how the different AI respond and how that solves some issues, how it creates different problems. And I'm one of those persons who say, look, this is my idea. I'm listening to other people who might have other suggestions, and it could be completely non-related topics, but I'm going to listen, and I'm like, okay, wait, that is useful, that is useful, that is useful. And if people just come from a very specific point of view, like, this is what I'm going to push, this is what needs to be done, they tend to really have a bit of a more narrow view. And if you're able to take a step back and say, okay, but wait, how about, like, this is from a player perspective, but you need to also look at how it's going to affect the meta on a bigger scale. And being able to take that step back is something I can do. And it's something I love. It's just go back, combine things, analyze. And that's something I'm bringing to the table, otherwise than saying, okay, that's a good point. You got a point, but considering these other factors that you might not be thinking about it, how you're suggesting it right now is not going to work. But this sounds valid. Let's work on that. Like, I'm not going to sit there, go, that's a bad idea, and that's it. It's like, okay, that's your suggestion. Let's go with that.
I'm not asking about your style. It's more of, you sound like a mature adult, which somebody would fit into CSM because you treat the company with respect without trying to, make some kind of reputation for yourself. So that's already off the board, and those are table stakes anyway. But you have a resume. What's on that resume? I think you're an FC. I think you work with ARC. Can you tell us a little bit about that kind of thing?
Okay, yeah. ARC is the Aratoka Research Consortium. It's an alliance, and it's also a open community that just loves to look at things lore related, dive into it, and trying to figure out how does this cryptic information that we get, how does that actually fit together, and is there things we can build on to make educated guesses on which directions the game might go to.
Yeah, and it's if you are not familiar with their work, I promise you it is worth visiting their site. Where can they find stuff on ARC?
We have a lot of different things on the in-game forum, the Intergalactic Summit. There are regular posts where we just got complete analysis on different bits of content. Like currently with the Triglavians, there's an entire analysis. They're called primers. Like we're releasing primers, and there's complete analysis. Like, okay, this is how many different stars. This is where the invasion spread out through Eve, and based on incredible statistical analysis, there's like a prediction, like with the entirety of Eve, these 72 solar systems have a higher risk of being hit by a Triglavian invasion as a foothold system.
I just shared some of ARC's most recent work in Twitch chat, specifically referring to what Dutch was just talking about.
Yeah, thank you. This is an incredible amount of analytical
and
work.
And in this case, it's on the Triglavians, but when the drifters were introduced, there was a lot of research and publications on the drifters. ARC runs public drifter hive fleets where they dive into an unknown wormhole to explore the drifter hive, get components, and keep an eye out on it, because CCP has shown that they occasionally make changes and don't tell anything about it unless people find out. So we regularly dive into those to see what's new. And currently, I'm mostly involved with running the public fleets where people can just show up. We have a public published which ships we use, which fittings we use. We're not secrets. It's not a secret. And we even have fleet ships where we say, look, if you don't have the ISK, but you want to give it a go, we have these fleet ships that you can use. All that we ask is when you have to go or when the fleet is over, you give it back so other people can enjoy the same service by just showing up and experiencing what it is all about. And if they got questions on lore, we got a Discord, and there's a whole thriving community just going back and forth with, how about this? Or I've got this theory and I got that theory. And posting like, this is what we're working on. We're looking for input. Go ahead and roll with that.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. But
so you don't have to be part of the Alliance Aratoka Research Consortium to be part or can contribute to the ARC community within Eve.
Right. But not only that, you were also a fleet commander.
And that's the part, like, I played a really big part in getting things started. Occasionally I got questions, like I got asked by Astarothi, like, hey, we got some plans, can you come on over? Look at those fits, brainstorm, and I'm just, okay, what's your plan? What's your objective? And I'm not going to be there like, this is the way to go. I'm just sitting at, what's your plan? And if people come to ARC fits with like, okay, I want to change this, I want to change that, it's like, okay, what's your reasoning? It's a good point, but we're using it in this specific way. So based on that, we're not going to change it.
Right. So I'm gathering
but
that...
yeah, it's about getting people. These are bits of lore, because I've been playing since 2003 and I'm interested in the lore. I do know a bit more, like what's happening, how did things change, and how does the accessibility change for the players.
Yeah. So I'm gathering that you're an FC with expertise. You're involved in the material that's being developed now. You're part of an incredible group, ARC, that puts out a ton of analysis, excuse me, but also puts out a good chunk of media as well. Very high quality media to explain things. And you've been playing this game since the beginning, and you've taken breaks like everybody should take breaks. If you haven't taken a break, there's something wrong with you, like me.
Well, there were weeks where I didn't play that often,
Only
but
weeks?
I've never really stepped away or won E for a short amount of time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Same as me then. Yeah. Something wrong with us. We like this game too much. And you've seen CCP over the years grow as a company. I guess you were around when you broke the internet record with 2,000 players on at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You've seen it go to 62 to 64,000, which was another record, I think. Is there anything else about your candidacy that would set you apart from everyone else? Why should people remember not the Flying Dutchman, but DutchGunner? Why should they remember DutchGunner, and why should they vote for you?
The reason why people should vote for me is I'm not out here to bash others. I'm out here to help people find their way within Eve. And just because I have the most expertise in HiSec, give me information, I'll go with it. I'm here to bring information that CCP might not be aware of, combine it, and build a solid case, and go like, okay, don't miss out on this, or be careful of that, because that's going to rule out or cut people off from this content and to progress within the game and enjoy the game. Because if you're going to cut people off from content, or when it's going to be a few people who are going to dictate everything, just look at the Serenity and Nullsec. There was one group who owned everything, and collectively people said, you know what, that's it, I'm done, I'm quitting this game. And that's bad for Eve, and I don't want to see that happen.
Yeah. Well, who's your constituency? Like, who's going to vote for you? Are you familiar with people that are on Facebook? Are you familiar with people who follow ARC? You have a lot of fans from that, Arataka Research Consortium. Like, who are some of the people that you can reach that the normal CSM right now can't reach?
I'm pretty sure that the people that I can reach at this stage, because I'm an unknown, I don't have an established name, I'm not that famous. So anybody that I can reach out to are the same people, or probably current CSM members have better access to other people. But because of that, I mean, I'm an unknown. I'm working hard. I'm reaching out to CSM members to talk like, look, can we talk maybe about you willing to endorse me? Some of them have said like, okay, I'm willing to promote you. Others I haven't gotten a reply from yet. It's me knowing that I'm an unknown. I have to put in extra work. And that's also one of the reasons why I reached out to Talking Stations like, hey, I'm an unknown. Are you willing to give me an opportunity to reach a bigger audience?
You keep saying that, but even I've heard of you. So you're not an unknown. Like there's people that know who you are. I've seen when the drifters for the very first time appeared in HiSec, you were there with a fleet. You were monitoring them and watching it. And that is a historic moment in EVE Online, and you're in the middle of it. It's your fleet that's kind of helping defend or to be around the actions that were going on there. So I think you're being very modest. You know, you're an FC, you work with Arataka, and there's a great deal of people that I know that respect you tremendously, including Ashtarothi and Fonsway and these other guys and stuff. So maybe you have a constituency that you don't even know you have and stuff, but it would be neat to get them into the fold at the table when the game's being developed, that there may be people that you're in touch with or people that look up to you. And, you know, from all your vast experience from 2003 and say, this guy's seen the whole lifespan. He hasn't seen the last 5 years, or he hasn't seen since Brave came around and created the new bro, in space. This guy's seen the whole buffet.
Well, I think one thing that really sets me apart is that even though there are a lot of different communities, with regard to like the Triglavian content, I can reach out to them. They know how to find me. And if they're running in support of the Triglavians or anything else, I want to work with them. It's not like you're doing something other than me. Therefore, I'm going to oppose you. I've got a good common ground where no matter what you're doing on this content that I'm also involved in, let's get along. Let's find a way where everybody can do their own thing, and where we as a whole benefit it as much as we can, and we can just give a lot of other players a very enjoyable experience as well, or get them involved in things that they weren't aware of or never thought about before.
Yeah, right. Well, I'll just end with this. The last CSM minutes had CCP Hilmar, who's come back and given the development of the game a lot more direction lately. He's back involved. And he came back and said, yeah, there's a lot of high-level stuff, he said a different word, happening in this room. He was talking about the CSM and all the brain power that was in there and stuff. And so that would be great to have somebody with just as much brain power, but representing a different part of the game that they're actually developing for new players and for other players as well. It would be nice to have that kind of representation in there as well. So it would be good. It would be good to see that again, broad-based representation of the game. That's what we would like.
Yep,
want
definitely.
To see.
A lot of different views that have access to different parts, or where people are willing to reach out and get in touch, because it's like, hey, this person not only listens, but he works with whatever we're coming up with him. And if it's not enough, he gives feedback. Okay, I need more info on this, or I need more info on that. And they're not a person who goes, I know everything about this, and I'm just going to bring it and push this specific content.
Yeah.
I don't know what content CCP has planned, because I have not run for CSM before. But they
we've seen it
on a very good path, and I want to make sure that they continue to do that.
Yeah. Awesome. Dutch, it was nice meeting you. We met before, I think, because I was somebody that was watching you again when the drifters came in to HiSec. That was about June. That was about a year ago, June 2019. So, but it is nice to meet you, and good luck on your run.
Thank you for having me. And even if it's not CSM related, I'm happy to drop by and talk more about Triglavian stuff.
Yeah, man, absolutely. All right, so that was a little CSM. And one more time, that is DutchGunner, and you can find him running for CSM this year. Okay, so I think we've been through all the news. We've talked to Dutch. Fonsway, you always coming in dropping some last minute really good thing. Have you got anything?
I mean, so I talked a little bit about, the progression of the invasion and where we think it's going to go, based a lot on ARC's data, which is, kind of dovetails well with what Dutch was talking about. There was a world news article released 2 days ago on the 7th, that talks about the formation of Edencom, which is the new Eden Common Defense Initiative.
What is that? I got to stop you because this is new and it's important. What is Edencom?
Yes. So the new Eden Common Defense Initiative is an organization that was formed out of the power of all of the empires in order to respond specifically to the Triglavian threat. This is going to be impactful. Well, firstly, it's impactful right now because it's the name of the Capsuleer Day Clash combat sites for the event. These are Edencom facilities that are being attacked by a special group of the Triglavians called the Durogniks. They're the rats that we fight in these sites, but going forward, it appears that Edencom is a faction in game that we will be able to gain standings with. It would that is essentially confirmed because the internal name before it was changed to Edencom, which this was leaked on Hobo Leaks, was Test Faction for Trig Standing. That was what it was called internally. So, and then it was changed to Edencom. So standing is definitely going to be a piece of this. And here's where we stray into speculation. It stands to reason that there will be an opposing faction that you can also gain standing with, and that may very well be the Triglavian Collective itself. Again, that is speculation. The first part is not. The first part is definitely from game files and game code. So
it's a combined arms from the Empires and Concord specifically against a Triglavian threat.
Right.
Yep.
So what's this? So hold on a second. I want to stay with Edencom. What does this do to faction war if you have the four empires coming together to fight this alien? invasion.
Well, you can fight the Druglavians together and fight each other in the background. Faction warfare is going to remain as is for now. It's not going to be taken away or changed. The squabbles still go on because faction warfare is technically a capsuleer effort. It is not, it's we are privateers in the employ of the empires. So the empires get to do their thing with Edencom and provide resources, and we can help them, or we can help the faction war itself. There's enough capsuleer to go around.
And not to mention the part, like, sure, they still hate each other, they still have that war going, but it's kind of hard to fight a war if the core of your empire is going to be taken over by an outside source. So it's like, okay, we got this fight, but we got this bigger threat that we do need to handle together, because it's either we stand united or we fall divided.
Yeah, so the article that Tiger just linked in Twitch, I was actually about to link myself. I can blow through it real
Thank you,
quick if
Tiger.
you want. It describes Edencom and the formation of it and what it's for.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So, Provost Marshal Cassia Valkenier of Concord's Aegis Division formally announced the formation of the new Eden Common Defense Initiative, Edencom, in a press conference at DED headquarters in Uli today. The presser follows a wave of attacks by the Druglavian collective forces against Edencom production facilities involved in distributing materiel to capsuleers in conjunction with the Society of Conscious Thought celebration of Capsuleer Day YC122. Capsuleers have been urged by Concord to repel the Druglavian assault forces and retrieve any technology and material taken from the previously hidden Edencom facilities. Marshal Valkenier expressed disappointment that our counterintelligence efforts have so far not prevailed against Druglavian subversion, but railed against those who would support the Druglavians in their invasion of New Eden. Just to editorialize a little, this is referring to the fact that we have the ability to choose who to support in the Flashpoint combat sites. Every single time you go to a site, you can choose to fight the empires or you can choose to fight the Druglavians. So we've actually been killing the empires, and this is what Marshal Valkenier is very upset about. She continues, while preparations for a change in defensive strategy have been advanced for some time, it is clear to the Concord's inner circle and core empires that now is the time to formalize a dedicated common defense pact across the cluster. The New Eden Common Defense Initiative is that pact, and my own Aegis division will operate as the central coordinating organization within Edencom. The focus of Edencom will be on accelerating the fortification of New Eden star systems, supporting the member states of Concord and their defense efforts, and working as closely as possible with capsuleers loyal to the cause of our common civilization. Present at the briefing alongside Marshal Valkenier were Inner Circle President Seri Okonaya and DED Star Marshal Kersidur Eladal. While Edencom will take the lead in the new strategy of defense in depth and accelerated fortifications, Marshal Eladal's DED forces will continue to engage in counter-Druglavian operations together with their many other duties in New Eden. However, it is understood that the Inner Circle's Empire delegates had insisted on the establishment of a dedicated command organization more closely aligned with the interests of the core empires. The Amar Empire and Gallente Federation had taken a particular lead in promoting this change, as their expansive territories have borne the brunt of Druglavian invasion efforts. President Jacques Roden and Empress Katiz I have personally coordinated on this matter with their respective allies and satellite states falling in line with the new plan. In related news, DED and Aegis forces have confirmed that Druglavian forces continue to carry out extensive experimental operations on planetary surfaces across New Eden. Over the past month, systems across New Eden have seen populations seized and transferred to various environments. Druglavian experimental environments in Fliet, Dakba, Notoras, Uppold, and Palmon have been assaulted, and populations recovered by Aegis forces, in some cases allegedly working with our combined mercenaries in the pay of the Upwell Consortium. Even today, Druglavian scout forces have been sighted in Gezdik, Goltreten, Nani, and Pasari, following a pattern indicative of support for Druglavian service operations. Reports of collaboration and subversive support for the Druglavian collective are also on the rise across New Eden, with analysts speculating that Druglavian mimetic propaganda is responsible for a number of recent incidents. This is pretty rich with lore. Like, this is referring to the billboard videos as their mimetic propaganda. They're telling us, join or die. Obstruct the flow and be mortified, or support the flow and be glorified, etc.
Yeah.
And that how we have in fact been helping them. The players have been helping them in some form or another, and their planetary experiments that they're referring to refers to an earlier article that was more specific on how colonists have been abducted. Entire colonies have been, essentially removed and moved to other planets, and the people biologically modified and experimented on by the Triglavians. They are very much upping their game.
So this is a lot of what we're seeing is a continuation of a story that started how long ago in EVE Online?
2.5 years.
So it's been 2.5 years since they kind of started introducing this new race, the Triglavians, and their technology, and it's been unfurling for that long, with them taking over billboards and communication, them putting out new ships. Now they've invaded. Well, first pockets opened up where you could invade them or go into their sites and raid. And then they actually came out of those sites and are starting to spread through the cluster. And now we're getting to the last part of this, which is called Eclipse. And what happens during this attack? They're already attacking. They've already invaded, and they've been invading for about how long?
So the invasion has been going on for a little over a year now, I think, or about a year, give or take. So Abyss is about to turn 2. Abyssal Dead Space was released at the end of May, 2 years ago. So we're at a year and 11 months now. And it was only slightly before that, the whispers started happening, referring to these precursors that we hadn't seen before. Following Abyss was Invasion Chapter 1 and then Chapter 2. We are about to see Chapter 3. Chapter 3 will take place during the current quadrant called Eclipse. We have made a lot of predictions about this.
Hold the predictions. Hold the predictions. I just want to get the timeline for people to conceptualize what the game is doing. So about 2 years ago, we have these Triglavians arrive. They're pockets that we can go into. They're like little dungeons, basically. And then a year after that, which was last year, about this time, you had them start to invade, come out of those structures and start to actually menace systems in the form of like incursions or something. You would group
before they
PvP.
did that, they had a fantastic Easter egg for the Tier 5 Abyssal space where you could actually find the construction of a massive ship, which turned out to be the Zardoz mothership that you could fight around it in Chapter 1 with the World Arc Proving Ground.
Okay.
Yeah, so what he's referring to is a special room in Abyssal Dead Space where it's a construction yard, and you actually watched them construct the World Arc. This was before invasions were released. And then once they were released, the top tier combat site involved you facing down the World Arc and sending it back to where it came from.
Yeah. So we got glimpses of what was to come, and this arc comes out of some of this abyssal dead space or whatever, and unleashes ships to fight you in your territory. And that's what's been going on in high sec for a while. It's been a lot of money making going on because you get rewards for fighting these guys. You also get pieces that you can mutate with your modules and make the modules better or worse depending on how it mutates. So that's some of the new gameplay that's been going on for the last 2 years. And we're coming to the end of that. And it was supposed to be announced at this last FanFest, but that got canceled due to COVID. So without the FanFest, they've just been kind of holding back a lot of this storytelling that they've been doing for the last few years. What can we expect to happen in the next, 6 months to a year?
We're going to see the conclusion of the invasion story. This is Chapter 3, the final chapter. It has been stated by CCP that the player's actions will determine how this goes down. They haven't stated if that is an ongoing thing, as in the player's actions will ongoing determine how this goes down, or our actions during Chapter 3 will determine the final state. This remains to be seen. There have been those who have theorized that, obviously we saw in the Eclipse trailer a Stargate being shut down and a star being taken over. We know that they have been focusing on the A0 and B0 blue stars, the smaller blue stars, the ones that were not involved in the Apocrypha event, which were the O1s.
Let's keep it even higher. Sorry, let's keep it even higher level than that. Basically, the Triglavians are going to be taking over stars and shutting off.
We expect them to be taking over solar systems in some form or another.
And shutting off access to them.
Permanent or temporary.
And shutting off.
Yes, that is the implication by the shutting down of the Stargates.
Now,
it is
game-wise,
possible these systems will only be accessible by wormholes at this point.
Game-wise, interesting. So game-wise, you are going to be interrupted. Your normal paths are going to be interrupted by these invasions, by this eclipse of the sun. They're going to shut off gates on your normal path in the game. And we did ask about this. It's going to be permanent changes.
Well, so permanent could very well mean that,
this is going to be ongoing
invasions as a concept. Yeah, that we will now see roaming invasions just as we do now, and this is going to be permanent content. As in, now wherever the invasion is, you have to filament in or take a wormhole in or who knows what. That could be the permanent state, or it's possible that the permanent state will be the A0 and B0 blue star systems are now, some portion or all of those will be permanently disconnected, or will be something that is will create a something similar to the faction warfare war zone, where these are systems that are constantly fought back and forth over.
Right. We don't know how it's going to be permanent.
Yeah.
Like this
Yes,
phenomenon.
we don't know the nature of the permanence is unknown to us.
So in other words, this could be happening and rolling through in different places, kind of like space weather, which we've talked about, where you lose connections to things periodically and you have to fight for it back. Or it could be that there's permanent actual geographic changes to the paths of the gates in EVE Online, which is doubtful, but it's a possibility as well.
It's entirely possible that the small subset of systems that ARC has identified as highest risk will be the ones that we now forever fight over back and forth. That's one potential interpretation of this.
And there's room in between, right, where something is, some gates are, blocked off and a certain path on the map is blocked off. Not for a few hours, but maybe for a few weeks. Like there could be.
I would expect it to be days, as the current invasions are.
Yeah, so it could be more than just something that's temporary. I'll just wait it out. It could be like, no, I better make Plan B and go this other path and stuff. Who knows? We don't know, but we do know it's going to be a game changer for EVE Online, quite literally.
We should also expect new resources and opportunities to be present in these systems while they're taken over.
Yeah. All right,
and
cool.
Most of it is still hard to be certain. Like most of it is still speculation at this point.
Yeah.
Like shutting off of stargates, isolating systems. Is it going to happen straight away, or is that going to be the end result if the Triglavians are supported or if they aren't stopped? It's all speculation.
Yeah.
But very, very interesting. And I've got a small army of people going, what's going to happen? Squee!
And so what you're saying is there might be a tug of war over systems, like who's helping Triglavians shut it down and who's helping.
Similar to faction warfare.
Right. Like that's why I was saying, what's going to happen to faction warfare? Does it become a moot point because now it's no longer humans fighting humans. Now it's all of humans fighting aliens.
Well, it may very well. It actually, if things go the way I expect, it's going to be Capsuleers on the side of Edencom versus Capsuleers on the side of the Triglavian Collective.
Right.
And either that could be like, okay, these are the sites, and depending on which, like, how's the outcome going to be on these sites, is going to flip either to one side or the other, or that could be a completely new thing where you actually have Capsuleers fighting other Capsuleers, where it's just players going, we want to support the Empires, fighting it out against Capsuleers wanting to support the Triglavians.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Well, so here's a comment by Mr. Carl. Says, sounds like slightly advanced version of Sasha invasions. Dutch, you've done invasions from Sancha before, and you've been involved in this. Do you agree with that statement, or is it different?
The Triglavian invasions are already an advanced version of Sancha incursions. They're already a little bit more dynamic than those. The Sancha incursions are exceedingly formulaic. Things generally happen the same way every time. It's all about execution and precision, whereas engaging in the combat sites in Triglavian invasions is more about being dynamic and able to adapt to what is currently happening. Not only are each individual spawn in each site, essentially random within a given range, there are roaming scout packs, there are roaming fleets of Triglavians that just fly all around these systems and will warp in on you and call their friends.
It goes even further, because depending on which stage the invasion is in, you're going to see a different composition and a different size of waves and roaming fleets. As the invasion progresses, things are going to get more dangerous, and depending on how many fleets are active, you can actually see a difference in which type of ships you'll be seeing. If there's only one fleet active, you'll see a lot more battleships and battlecruisers. If there's a lot of fleet activity, you'll mostly see frigates and destroyers with the occasional battleship. So it's a really highly dynamic system that just adapts and changes where you never know what to expect. And that's one of the things where initially you could do things where you were okay with 3 Guardians. The difficulty was ramped up over time at a really steady pace. So things that you could do initially are no longer valid now. So you have to keep up with the things that are happening and adjust accordingly.
Yeah.
It's no longer about, if we go with this, we can just take a sledgehammer and we're going to complete it no matter what. This is like, no, you need to be able to handle different things in different forms of escalation. If you're not prepared, you're going to lose your ship or the entire fleet.
Right. All right. Well, we'll have to see how it goes. Looks pretty exciting. Well,
it's really exciting.
I think last weekend we had a presentation. TIS on Sunday was about Triglavians. Right, François? You were on that show with Torvald, yes. And we covered some of the stuff and how you could get involved with it, since it was kind of a login incentive program to get into Abyssal Space and to fight it out, because you would get SP as a reward. So we wanted to make sure that was covered and people knew how to get in on that. But we will circle back on Triglavians and some of the PvE mutations that are happening in HiSec regarding this stuff. I think it is far more advanced than incursions, and I loved incursions because I got to meet a lot of people that I normally wouldn't know. That's what happens when you join Purple Fleets, but that's also what happens when there's stuff in the game to incentivize shy players to kind of go and do a thing together. So this is similar in that sense that it's group PvE. And if you're lucky enough to get on one of Dutch's fleets, or actually the Conclave, if you know Ashtarothi, he has a group that dedicates itself to this sort of stuff. Those are 2 good options for you to meet players that you wouldn't normally group up with, even if you're a shy person. All right.
I can only talk about my fleets, but all it takes is being able to listen to comms on Discord, and as long as you can fly one of the ships, you're in, regardless if you have the ship or not.
Are they pretty easy to fly, those ships?
What
I mean by that,
yes. The ships are fairly easy to fly. You might need a bit of an instruction on how I run the fleets, but I don't really take much of a sledgehammer. It's more like a scalpel, and I delegate as much as possible down to individual fleet members for tagging or keeping in check that, like checking how is everybody doing in a specific role. So it's a lot more of an interactive experience if you're in one of my fleets.
Cool. All right, good. I'm going to actually join one of your fleets. That sounds pretty fun. Do you run them at a certain time, or are they just whenever you? How do I find out?
Usually, I aim to start fleets at roughly 1800 Eve time. I'm working with another player to also expand more into the US time zone, but with Corona, things did get heavily disrupted to, otherwise we would have had more than just strong EU. We would also have US time zone coverage already, but mostly 2000 Eve time. I've got the ARC Discord where I always ping a day ahead, like, okay, this is going to be the focus we're deploying to. This is the time where the fleet is going to start. So it's fairly easy to be informed and know where to show up and at what time.
Yeah, can you give me a link to that Discord, and I'll just post it, and then we'll wrap up.
I'll have to look it up. Give me a oh, actually, no, wait, hang on. I'll drop it to you.
Yeah, I think actually I have it, but I don't know if I can grab the link or invite people to it. I haven't tried it yet, but we'll do that. It's around here somewhere. I'm in so many of these Discords that
I know.
Yeah, too many Discords actually. So a lot of these are already closed, but
I'll put an invite to ARC's Discord and Twitch chat.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, there it is. Yeah. There you go. If you want to get involved there. So I'll put it in the show notes too at the bottom if you want to. Cool. We'll check it out. And yeah, Matterall's planning to undock GigX. It happens. Okay. Good to see you. Want to say thanks to Dutch and François for telling us about some of the stuff that's going on with the lore.
Happy to be here.
I did put this one thing up here. Stories of New Eden is a good place to go check out some of the backstories and chronicles of EVE Online, which are slices of life that give you flavor to the environment that you're playing in. What is Xenocracy here? Fonsway, why did you link that?
I was making a point of that because we were talking about the nature of Capsuleers or Empyreans and how we really are essentially post-human, immortal space gods. I'll just read like the very, very end of that story. This is a conversation between a Capsuleer and the administrator of his planetary colony.
Oh
which
yeah,
is,
that's a good one.
So this really shows you what's going on here when you remove the possibility of death and you have impossible wealth. That sound you're hearing, Vistus replied, is your planet's bombardment siren. You've probably never had to pay much attention to it in the past, seeing as your world is safely under the jurisdiction of Concord, but that is no longer the case. As he spoke, the back window of the conference room took on a noticeably red tint, saturating the room in crimson light. What you're seeing now is the targeting laser, used to aim my battleship's 6 425mm railgun turrets. At this altitude, the gravity of your planet will augment the standard launch velocity of each solid projectile to speeds well beyond operational specifications, enough to obliterate anything within half a kilometer of the impact site. Vista's image grew larger on the screen before he continued. Anything between that location and 2 kilometers from ground zero will suffer a worse fate, as the antimatter suspended in each shell escapes its containment field and expands in a random dispersion pattern, colliding with the ambient normal matter on the ground: buildings, trees, children, everything. Whatever these particles touch will experience matter dissociation on an atomic level, as piece by piece they are reduced to unidentifiable residual particles. He paused briefly and then concluded, with a single thought, I can reduce your entire city to a smoldering crater. The boiling wind rushed in to replace the void left behind will be laced with the dust particles that were once the bodies of everyone you know and love. Do you understand? Yves looked down to see one of his hands shaking. He swallowed hard, and when he next spoke, his voice came out as a raspy whisper. I understand. I'm sorry, Administrator Yves, but I'm afraid I didn't catch your last words. Do you understand? Yes. The red light faded, and for the rest of the afternoon, the Capsuleer spoke, and the planetary administrator listened with obedience. This is what happened when the Capsuleer told the guy to move a whole city in a week instead of a day. And, this is what he threatened to do.
Yikes.
It's definitely one of the unsavory kinds of Capsuleers.
Right. The only
In
thing
the book Eve Source, there's also a fantastic interview where you have a non-Capsuleer coming over to the remote parts of space to interview a Capsuleer, and it is fantastically well written, where it just gives you an indication on how different Capsuleers are compared to people that are not Capsuleer.
Yeah.
The Capsuleers are not human and haven't been since they got in the capsule for the first time. When you remove the prospect of death and you give them infinite wealth, you kind of lose your mind and go crazy.
You'll see different variations in how people decide to fill in or hang on to whatever humanity they decide to keep.
Those are deep psychological issues. Thank you for going through those. I want to thank everybody today for watching, and we're going to go ahead and, oops. I hit the wrong button. I don't know. Are you guys seeing a commercial?
Yeah, there's a commercial break.
Oh my God.
Oh, did you hit the play a commercial command?
Yeah.
You know, there, it's over.
Is it over?
We're back. We're back.
I'm so sorry I put you guys through a commercial. That was not...
To be clear, when I say Capsuleers aren't human, I mean Capsuleers are infomorphs. We are digital beings, a digital consciousness that is transferred from body to body at will. The human body is no longer necessary at this point.
Wild. Okay, I think the commercial is over. Am I right? Let me know.
Yes.
All right.
They're no longer truly mortal. They're a bit of a demigod, because if the infrastructure fails, you can still die. So you're not truly immortal, but you're about as immortal as you can be.
All right, we'll get into it another time. I got to wrap up, but I want to apologize for hitting the wrong button and producing a commercial. But I got to take that button off somehow. All right, thank you very much, Fonsui. Thank you very much, Dutch. Let's actually have some lore, some deep lore review, so people can actually engage with it, because it's pretty complex and it's pretty interesting. And I think if you actually read the stuff, your character and what goes on in the game makes a lot of sense. That's why I recommend it. But we'll do that at a different time. Thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to go ahead and do what we normally do here, a raid. We'll go ahead and throw it to Bjorn B. So stick around for him, and we will see you tomorrow on Talking Stations. I want to say this. We have UAX Death on tomorrow. He's returned to the game, as well as Jay Silva. So check that out. We will see you tomorrow on Talking in Stations.